Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown between two warriors of legend. On the left hand side, representing DBD and the High Elves, we have Consul of Rome facing down against Bobman and his Wood Elf Fey folk. Should be a really good fun game, and this was a high stakes battle. Both these guys were competing in the Warhammer World Championships. This was their Group 2 games, and the winner of this match, I believe, actually qualified from the group. So it's a big fat decider, and it is the elf on elf violence. Typically, it has been rather high elf favoured during the lifespan of Warhammer Total War, but because of the recent buffs and kind of changes to Wood Elves in general, it is far more even than it ever has been before. Let's have a little look at the build. So for the force of the High Elves, we have Spearmen on the flanks. Always good at trying to push away Glade Guard, or Glade Riders, I should say. Wild Riders, Great Stags, all that good stuff. We have quite a few dotted around. And in the central formation, it looks like we have some Silver and Guards, so some more of the more elite High Elf who will be able to form that big shield wall, pop out those little spears and poke down the enemy. And I'm a huge fan of these guys in this matchup. The main reason being that they come in with that glorious 30% magic resistance, makes them crazy good up against enemy Dryads and so forth. We have 1 inch of Shadow Warriors to do a nice little bit of counter skirmishing, and a bucket ton of Lothran Seaguard in the back lines. It looks like 3 units. In fact, these guys are very good at counter skirmishing enemy archers. They're shielded. They also have those spears in case Wild Riders and the like do pop into the back line. On this little hill's ridge, we have a single Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. It's going to be guarded by some Silver Helms, and it looks like there are Silver Helms, in fact, dotted on both flanks. Leading the force is going to be a basic Prince. Don't often get to see him in action. He's on foot as well with his mighty shield, looking very stoic and battle hardy. Comes in with martial prowess, and that is absolutely it. So going very cheap to go as wide as possible, which always, in general, pretty good up against Wood Elves. We also have a Mage of Fire, Burning Head, and Fireball. It's going to be her poisons of choice. Really fun, well-oiled build. We've got some rangers in the centre as well, to be able to chew through the enemy a little bit better, but really it's going to be looking at those Lothran Seaguard and cycle charging Silver Helms to really beat down the Wood Elf force. Now for the force of the Wood Elves, we do have Glade Riders with spears, as well as Wild Riders on this right-hand flank. I feel like people have forgotten a lot about Wild Riders since the introduction of Great Stag and Knights, but I'm a huge fan of Wild Riders. There's nothing quite like some demonic fey creatures riding to battle on stags towards you, screaming bloody murder, and kind of bringing the pain to the build. They're incredibly fast, some of the most expensive and scary light cavalry in the entire game. Dryads are going to be the weapon of choice for the main front line. Not the biggest fan of this pick, simply because Silver Guard are so popular here. But apart from that, they will be able to tear through Spearmen and Rangers rather effectively. And they are quite quick, so there's obviously some pros and cons. In the back lines, we have triple Glade Guard. It looks like all of them are going to be equipped with Starfire Shafts. And they're going to be protected by double War Dancers with Azrai Spears. These little tattooed ladies will be swirling those blades around their head, whilst a war cry is ripped from their lips as they slaughter enemy cavalry rather well. But they can do a decent job as well up against infantry. More Glade Riders with spears in the back line, as well as Wild Riders and more Glade Riders on that left-hand side. Leading this force is going to be a humble Spellweaver of high magic. Tempest, Soul Quench, and Apotheosis are going to be the weapons of choice for her. So again, pretty cheap Lord. It looks like Fireball is going to be coming in with the speed, buff, and invisibility of Loex Blessing. It looks like she is able to juke, although some of those Dryads do have to walk through the embers. Sure, they're not big fans of that throughout. Eagle Bolt Thrower does seem to be focusing down on the Wild Riders, who have taken refuge behind this little kind of, I don't even know what to call this. Ruptures in the ground. That's what we're going for, as smoke does kind of pume off them as well. Wild Riders will be bouncing and bounding around the left-hand flank now, looking to take the low ground to sneak up on the enemy and not take too many bolts to the face. Dryads are advancing as quickly as possible. The Wood Elves have to take the initiative here because of that artillery piece. It looks like they're certainly trying to do that. On this left-hand flank, it's going to be very hard, though. Spearmen have formed a shield wall above the ridgeline. And we have Liam Reavers, in fact, waiting just behind to countercharge in. In the front line, Dryads are going to be engaging very soon as they clatter in to some of these Spearmen. They do a brilliant job up against the Spearmen, of course, we said before. Silver Guard will be a much more stoic defence. Dryads do charge in, but lovely, brilliant play by the High Elf player, pulling back the Spearmen into the thunderous charge of the Silver Helms to clatter into those Dryads and absolutely butcher them. Now these Silver Helms need to pull back once more, and Spearmen take their place. Really lovely work there, although an overload has happened on this flank. Wild Riders and Glade Riders sneaking around the back line, and this is going to be some disgusting stuff. Spearmen take a Soul Quench down the flank, taking huge damage And then the Wild Riders come in the back. Spearmen, of course, are surrounded and going to be breaking from that huge shock damage. Really lovely, well-played stuff there. Quite a few bits of friendly fire onto the Dryads by that Soul Quench, but I really love the idea, and it did manage to work relatively well. Silver Helms kind of getting dragged out into the open where they can be shot down by the Glade Guard, who are now unleashing hell as the main battle line has engaged, but it's gone down rather quickly. Some Dryads here are being forced off, and Dryads all across the battle line are faltering, going really good so far for the High Elves, as that Bolt Thrower and Bow line is still active. And these Wild Riders on this flank with the Glade Riders have done no damage whatsoever and taken pretty consistent, huge amounts of kind of damage over the course of battle from the Eve-Claw Bolt Thrower. One thing which is a saving grace though so far for the Wood Elves is this unit of Wild Riders on the right hand flank with these Glade Riders. They have managed to break off one unit of Silver Helms who's been escorted away by the Spellweaver of High Magic, and these Reavers are going to get slaughtered to the last elf if they're not careful. Right hand side of the battle going far better for the Wood Elves, and their Glade Guard are now unleashing fury and fire upon the enemy, doing massive damage. Lothran and Seaguard not having the best of times. Looks like the Major Fire did take a little bit of burst damage as well. Glade Riders and War Dancers been rather conservative, just holding the line and trying to grind out the enemy with that long-range Wood Elf firepower. Bit of a mistake on this left-hand side, though, by the Wood Elf player. These Wild Riders have been idle far too long and taken pretty big damage now from the Bolt Thrower. They are finally getting activated, starting to push up on the enemy, but they're pretty beat up at this point, down to about half health without getting engaged. Certainly not a good day for them. Big Fat Burning Head does come down the line. It looks like it isn't overcast, however, just a single cast. Though that may aid it slightly. So overcast, the head goes far more straight here. It's kind of whipped around, but unfortunately couldn't quite catch those Glade Guard there. Spearmen are now pushing forward to hunt those guys down. Over on the far side, once again, good play by this unit of Wild Riders. They are getting Apotheosis to keep them nice and topped up. Cycle charging into the rear of units, helping the beleaguered and beat up Dryads. Win engagements 2-1 up against Spearmen and Rangers. And this unit is up to 112 kills, looking very healthy. Is now bounding down the battlefield, slamming into those Spearmen and pushing them over. A shield wall is no good if you do not stand on your feet. And the Wild Riders are proving that fact, managing to break 3 units over on that side. Glade Riders and War Dancers now starting to push into the bow line rather effectively. Nice combination, because the best counter to the Glade Riders in this build is those Silver Helms, in which the War Dancers will be able to rip and tear them asunder. It looks like that's just what they're trying to do as a Soul Quench comes in to check their charge. Over on the right hand side though, the Elves have managed to re-stabilise a little bit. Dryads being forced off. Wild Riders once again just kind of getting obliterated from long range. Bolt Thrower doing a pretty decent job, though it has used up a large amount of its ammunition and still not killed a single unit yet. Or not finished off a unit, I should say. Shadow Warriors not doing too bad, up to 50 kills, have managed to find a little bit of pocket of safety behind some Silver Helms who have now been committed to the front line, and Rangers and Spearmen. Another Fat Burning Head does go down the line on those Glade Guard. I don't think it's overcast, it doesn't seem to be doing enough damage, which could be a bit of a mistake. One good overcast is better than 2 smaller ones in my opinion. You really need that big burst damage to shatter off and just annihilate your units where possible. In the back line, those Wild Riders, who are up to Silver Chevron now, rather impressive work by them, are getting healed on the charge as they do get bowed down on the approach. Some horsemen do flee from them as well. Shadow Warriors going to be taking huge burst damage. Shadow Warriors, yeah, they're pretty good melee combatants all round as they do whip out their swords to engage the Wild Riders, but they're simply going to be outclassed, particularly on the charge. Wild Riders have a disgusting charge bonus. War Dancers do engage with Silver and Guard, and it's not a fight the War Dancers normally want to take, but there's not much else in this build which can kill the Guard. Dryads, of course, aren't going to be fantastic here because of resistance, and neither is the Cavalry. So the War Dancers getting in there, doing the dirty work that they need to do, although Rangers are here to support. A big pocket of strength does form for the High Elves over here. Really gritty game so far. This is going back and forth as the Lothran and Seaguard continue to rain fire down on the Wild Riders, who did manage to surround and butcher the Major Fire, driving her from the field. She is very low health-wise, and it looks like the Spellweaver is going to escort her away. Good play so far by the Spellweaver, not committing her to any engagements she can't win, but also using her aggressively, which is what I like to see. Wild Riders do get hit by Lurk's Blessing, increasing their speed so they can chase down these range units a little bit quicker, and they're certainly going to mop up these beleaguered and beat up High Elf forces. A little bit of rallying has been going on from the Wood Elves in general, as all of the archers are now loosing arrows into the mist. The War Dancers doing a decent job up against the Silver and Guard. Rangers did get in there for a nice surround, though. Good play by both players on this flank. But due to the missile superiority of the Wood Elves, I think that flank is certainly going to go in their favour. Left-hand side, however, is a different story. Bolt Throw did finally get forced off by the Wild Riders, who have been bouncing back and forth up that back line, just destroying fools, and it looks like they're going to come in and actually break the resistance of the Silver and Guard, who have held for so long. They're wavering, but down they go. The charge of the Stags in the back. simply too much for them. A lot of High Elf forces are running, and the balance of power is very heavily in the Wood Elf favour at this point. There's still a Prince though, and there's still Spearman and Lothran Seaguard going relatively strong. Ammunition getting very low for the forces of the Wood Elves. And left-hand flank, it has gone generally okay for the High Elves during the course of the battle. Glade Riders are darting up into combat though, just trying to punish the Lothran Seaguard with as much burst damage as possible, whilst the War Dancers are here and fighting. Woven Mist has been popped on them, which is a little bit of a mistake at the moment. It's good on the approach, but of course that melee defense is rather key. If they didn't have that on, they may even be able to win that engagement. So decent number of spearmen here though, 65, who can rally to the Prince, and the spear wall once again has been made. The Wild Riders this time thinking, you know what, we don't want to try like that much, and actually deciding to fall back out of bowfire range. Double silver chevron, I believe. They started at double bronze or triple bronze, so that's a big improvements by them so far. We'll definitely check their damage value out at the end of the game. Wood Elf player doing his good, diligent play, chasing off all the enemy routing units, trying to push the balance power as heavily in his favour as possible before engaging, because this is still a decent chunk of Elves and a full health Prince who's easily going to be able to chew his way through the majority of the Wood Elf forces. However, this unit of 52 War Dancers may be able to turn the tide rather heavily. Spearmen in the distance are now just getting crumped by the Spellweaver and the beat-up Glade Riders. Coming in for one last charge in the rear. Spearmen try to counter-charge where possible, but it's kind of hard to counter-charge a horse when you are on foot. Although the spear, you could definitely knock it over or scare it away at least, and it looks like that's just what they've done, in fact, shattering that unit of Glade Riders and forcing back the Spellweaver, who has fled downhill. War Dancers coming in just to try and get one or two last little shanks in. In the distance, Wild Riders have been used to chase down some routing troops, and the Glade Guard are all out of ammunition. They need to come in now for a big fat surround on the High Elf forces. And in the distance, 52 War Dancers. That's going to be pretty key here in this fight. Again, they are anti-infantry troops, or anti-large troops, I should say, not anti-infantry, but they still do a good job up against the infantry because they have relatively decent combat stats, so the Spearmen will not fare particularly well against them. Down here on the low ground, it looks like Arcane Conduit has been popped by the Spellweaver, perhaps trying to get one or two last apotheoses off on the Wild Riders. Have a Soul Quench down the battle line as well would be pretty disgusting stuff. Balance power looking bleak for the High Elves so far, as the Wood Elves kind of just pull back a little bit and get ready for a lovely big fat surround. The Spellweaver getting a little bit close for comfort there as well, as the Lothran and Seaguards try desperately to drag down some of these Wild Riders who have caused them so much pain and hurt all battle. They are coated in blood, but much of it is not their own. Trying to do some damage to them, but they are very quick, bounding away out of the range of the Lothran Seaguard here. War Dancers slowly getting into the engagement range. Woven Mist has been popular in their melee defense, but increasing their missile resistance by a huge margin. Trying to bait some of those shots by the Lothran Seaguard, but they're definitely not interested at the moment. Really only got eyes on the prize of those Wild Riders, as Spearmen do start to form up ranks, and it is going to be a bloody fight for sure. And in come the War Dancers, just charging and screaming into battle before fleeing. I was about to get cinematic view, and they hear my cries, rolling into battle, whirling their Darth Maul-esque blades. Oh my god, look at that! That was insane. I don't even know what that War Dancer did. Sticking the spear in the ground and doing some high kicks, epic stuff. And it looks like the Wild Riders do manage to swoop up and around into the back line. Apotheosis has been popped, stacking their fear to double fear, which actually does nothing, but it's pretty cool. And the Lothran and Seaguard are indeed routing. The beat-up Spearmen are also being dragged down. Again, fantastic late management played by the Wood Elves, distracting the larger unit of Spearmen as well as the Prince, whilst the Wild Riders just beat up and kill everything else, helping push that balance of power, lower the leadership of the enemy, and it looks like the High Elves are indeed going to break and run from the field. Fantastic game, really awesome stuff. A valiant defeat, very valiant display by Consular Rome up against a tough opponent, the mighty Bobman. I don't believe Bobman is Bob Tresh, maybe he is. Bob Tresh is someone who's supported the channel for quite a while, been around and on the channel quite a few times, and is a really cool dude, but I'm not sure he would go by a different name, so I think it is just Bobman. But whoever you are, mysterious Bobman, you played a fantastic game, as did Consul of Rome. I really think that single unit of Wild Riders basically won him the game. 292 kills, disgusting stuff, and I have a little look at the damage value and all that stuff in just a second. But if you guys enjoyed, feel free to hit that thumbs up button. It always helps push out the video to more people, and feel free to subscribe as well if you do enjoy Total War Warhammer content. We drop stuff every single day, as well as some streams, once or twice a week. Next one is going to be Wednesday, where we have the DBD Last Qualifier, which is a big tournament series we host. It's going to be some good fun. So, apart from that though, if you do want to support the channel in any other way or join my Discord, there's links down below in the description. On the Discord, you can get involved and just chat with a load of cool guys, see a ton of pictures of ducks, get involved in tournaments and send me replays, and get involved in weekly challenges. There's an absolute ton there. We've got quite a few hundred people in there now, so good place to learn to play as well if you are relatively new to the game. And there's links to Patreon and all that standard YouTubey stuff down below. But here we go. So, the mighty Bobman, how did his troops fare? Spellweaver of High Magic did manage to get a relatively impressive 864 damage value, despite the fact of being a more support character, using almost all her spells just to heal up that single unit of Wild Riders, although there was a big fat Soul Quench early on, helped crumple at the left-hand flank of the High Elf forces. Also very good use, she's very speedy on her steed, chasing off enemy routing troops. Drives across the line did okay, nothing to be honest that great or to write home about. Really do get stumped by the Silver and Guard, but they are fast and they can also take a pretty decent amount of damage distracting the enemy, but the good micromanagement from Silver Helms really did kind of punish them a lot. War Dancers or Azrai Spears didn't have the best targets all game. By the time they got into the main engagement, a lot of the cavalry was dealt with, but they did the sticky stuff. They helped drag down the enemy infantry, whilst the Wild Riders mopped up the back line. 98 and 110 kills on both of them. 1,065 damage value here, 545 on the other one, but still pretty decent health at the end, and a lot of potential left in them. As for the Glade Guard of Starfire Shafts, 500 damage value here, 1,148 on another, and 1,500. So the two that stuck it out and fought basically used up all their ammunition, and despite the fact there wasn't any high key targets to shoot, it was a very wide build by both players, but in particular the High Elf force, and they still managed to make up a decent amount of value all round, slowly dragging down their Elvish cousins. The Glade Riders struggled quite heavily, particularly the ones on that left-hand flank and that unit of Wild Riders. Only 200 damage value on it. Oh, that's so bad. 31 on this unit. These guys just got absolutely hammered on that left-hand side. Kind of a little idle, a little bit too long, but at the same time it did take the gaze of the High Elf player, I suppose, while the other ones reaped havoc. This unit faring slightly better with 600 damage value. But the real MVP, and honestly the unit I think which won this victory for the Winter Forces, was this unit of Wild Riders. 292 kills is wild. 18k damage dealt, 2,722 damage value. Very impressive display, just picking those targets, picking the weak targets, isolating, attacking them, and crumping them, doing some really lovely damage. And as I said at the start of the video, Wild Riders, certainly do not forget them. They're very cool, they're very fast, they're super fragile, they encompass everything that it is to be a Wood Elf, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about them because of the newer fancy Great Stag Knights. But there's something amazing about the fury and hatred inside the eyes of a Wild Rider as it bounds and at blitz kind of pace across the battlefield towards you. As for Consul Rome and his High Elf warriors, they do certainly a good job. Interesting choice of the Prince as well, going dead cheap to go as wide as possible. Pretty cool pick all round. I maybe would have combined these together though and gone for an Archmage, but again then maybe you would have been sniped out a little bit, and the Prince is slightly hard to snipe as well, so I certainly understand the logic there coming in by Consul. Nearly 1,000 damage value as well, 976 on the Major Fire. I think Overcast and Burning Heads would have been a slightly better option. Maybe they were Overcast, but they just didn't seem to do as much damage as I expected at least. But, you know, maybe it's they didn't connect as what I thought. As for the spearmen across the line, they're simply to form up those shield walls and make them a big old bristly pine cone of spears and all that scary stuff. Held the line, and they did their job as they're meant to do it. The Rangers did one unit did okay. I mean, 623 damage value is pretty impressive. The other one got absolutely slaughtered, probably run over by the hooves of the enemy cav. Silver and Guard were a nice backbone as well, just standing and holding the line for an absolute age. 682 damage value doesn't sound too impressive, but considering it took 3 units to drag these guys down, particularly that rear charge from the Wild Riders, they certainly did a decent job. Across the back line as well, the Lothran Sea Guard, one unit managed to fight off the majority of its ammunition and fight to the bitter end, 1,294 damage value. The others faring slightly worse with 600 and 200 damage value respectively. As for the Shadow Warriors, they managed to find that nice little pocket of strength or safety just in the mid-game behind friendly territory, and that allowed them to use up a lot of their bow fire before the Wild Riders did eventually shut them down, managing to get an impressive 1,000 damage value. Now, I've played Consul Rome a few times, seen a lot of his replays, and he is a nightmare to try and get into his back line and shut down his units. We can see the Bolt Thrower shot for an absolute age. Shadow Warriors getting good value, as well as some of the Lothran Sea Guard. It is a big pain to shut down his long-range troops. Lane Reavers did falter, unfortunately, getting slaughtered by the more elite cavalry of the enemy. Silver Helms did some really nice shock damage early on, but didn't get the best value between them. As for Equal Bolt Throw, despite the fact it killed 30 models and the majority of them were all Wild Riders, still only getting 773 damage value. Still not too shabby, but considering it managed to use up pretty much all its ammunition, not the greatest either. But again, much like the High Elf build, these are two forces without crazy high value centerpieces. The Wild Riders really, and the War Dance, I suppose, are the kind of flair on the Wood Elf force. And on this side we have the unit of Shadow Warriors and the Bolt Thrower itself. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, peace. And as always, stay awesome.